Everyone expected the Omega to lower her head before the Alpha King. Nobody expected her to smile and say, "Catch me if you can." The grand hall of Silvermoon Kingdom became completely silent. Hundreds of eyes turned toward the young woman standing at the center of the room. Olivia Bennet was not the person anyone expected to challenge the most powerful Alpha in the Northern Territories. She was an Omega, a title that many in the kingdom still associated with weakness. She was also a woman who had spent years being judged before anyone bothered to know her story. But Olivia had learned something important during those years. People could decide what they saw, but they could never decide who she truly was. She stood calmly beneath the enormous crystal lights of the royal hall, her simple elegant dress contrasting with the royal garments surrounding her. Her steps were careful because of an old injury that had changed the way she moved, but her eyes showed no fear. That was the part people never understood. Olivia's body carried a reminder of her past, but her spirit carried proof of everything she had overcome. Across the hall stood Ethan Walker, the Alpha King of Silvermoon Kingdom. He was known throughout the werewolf territories for his discipline, his authority, and his ability to command respect with a single look. Most people lowered their voices when he entered a room. Most people followed his decisions without question. But Olivia did something no one expected. She looked directly at him. The moment began with a simple test. The royal gathering had been created to evaluate the strength and character of members seeking a place within the kingdom's future. Many believed Olivia had no chance. They whispered that she was too fragile. They believed her limitations defined her. They saw an Omega who needed protection instead of a person who had spent years protecting others. Olivia heard every word, but she did not let them become her truth. When Ethan approached, the room waited for her to step back. Instead, she offered a small, confident smile. "Catch me if you can," she said. The words were playful, but the meaning behind them was powerful. She was not challenging his authority. She was challenging the way everyone saw her. For the first time in years, someone had looked beyond her title and her past. Ethan stared at her, surprised by the confidence behind those words. He had met countless people who wanted his approval. He had met leaders who tried to impress him. But he had never met someone who stood before him without fear or expectation. "Repeat that again," Ethan said quietly. His voice carried through the silent hall, but his expression was not anger. It was curiosity. Olivia simply held his gaze. In that moment something changed. The Alpha King who believed he understood strength discovered a woman who challenged everything he thought he knew. And the Omega everyone underestimated had just captured the attention of the one person in the kingdom no one dared to surprise. The entire room watched as a new story began. One where the person considered the weakest might become the strongest force of change Silvermoon Kingdom had ever seen. After the moment that changed the atmosphere of Silvermoon Kingdom, everyone began asking the same question. Who was Olivia Bennet really? To most of the pack, she was only the Omega with a past they never bothered to understand. They saw her injury before they saw her courage. They noticed her different steps before they noticed the strength that carried her forward every single day. But Ethan Walker saw something else. He saw a person who had stood in front of an entire kingdom without asking for sympathy. The royal gathering ended, but the image of Olivia's confident expression remained in his mind. The Alpha King had spent years surrounded by people who carefully chose every word around him. Advisors spoke with caution. Warriors showed respect. Members of the pack followed tradition. Yet Olivia had spoken to him like he was simply another person standing in the room. That was what surprised him most. Not her words. Not her challenge. Her honesty. The next morning, rumors traveled throughout Silvermoon Kingdom. Some members of the pack believed Olivia had been too bold. They thought an Omega should know her place. Others quietly wondered how someone they had ignored for so long could carry herself with such confidence. Olivia heard the whispers, but she continued with her responsibilities. She did not enter the kingdom seeking attention. She did not want to prove herself to people who had already decided who they thought she was. Every morning, she helped prepare healing supplies for the village near the castle. She spent time with younger members of the pack, teaching them patience and understanding. She listened to those who felt forgotten because she knew exactly what that feeling was like. Her life had taught her that being underestimated could either break someone or reveal what they were truly made of. Ethan began noticing the small details others ignored. He saw how villagers greeted Olivia with genuine warmth. He saw how people trusted her advice. He saw how she remembered everyone's struggles while asking for nothing in return. The Alpha King had always believed leadership came from making difficult decisions. Olivia showed him another side of leadership. Sometimes it came from kindness. Sometimes it came from simply being present. One afternoon, Ethan found Olivia near the gardens outside the royal grounds. She was carefully organizing healing plants while the sunlight moved through the trees. "You do not seem bothered by what people say about you," Ethan said. Olivia looked up with a small smile. "I used to be," she answered. "But I realized something. People will always have opinions about things they do not understand." Her words stayed with him. Ethan realized she was not pretending to be strong. She had built that strength through every moment when she had no one else to depend on. "Why did you say those words yesterday?" he asked. Olivia looked toward the garden, thinking carefully. "Because everyone expected me to act like I was less than them. I wanted them to remember that my challenges do not decide my worth." For the first time, Ethan understood that Olivia was not asking the kingdom to feel sorry for her. She was asking them to see her clearly. And as the Alpha King watched the Omega everyone underestimated, he began questioning everything he had been taught about strength, weakness, and what truly made someone worthy of respect. The days after Olivia Bennett's unexpected challenge became a turning point inside Silvermoon Kingdom. The Omega who everyone once overlooked had become the person everyone was quietly talking about. Some still questioned her confidence. Some still believed her past defined her future. But Ethan Walker could no longer ignore what he had seen with his own eyes. Olivia was not trying to prove that she was stronger than everyone else. She was simply refusing to let others decide that she was weak. For the Alpha King, that realization created a feeling he had rarely experienced. Curiosity. Ethan had spent years studying kingdoms, strategies, and the responsibilities of leadership. He understood alliances and traditions. He understood the expectations placed on an alpha. But Olivia challenged something deeper. She challenged the way he viewed strength itself. One morning, Ethan visited the village near the castle where Olivia spent much of her time helping others. He expected to find someone trying to gain influence after the attention she received. Instead, he found the same person he had seen before. Olivia was quietly helping an elderly villager organize supplies. She was teaching young members of the pack about healing plants. She was listening to people who needed someone to understand them. There was no desire for recognition in her actions. There was only genuine care. Ethan watched from a distance and realized something important. Olivia's confidence did not come from wanting to stand above others. It came from knowing she had value even when others failed to see it. Later that day, Ethan spoke with her near the garden paths surrounding the village. The peaceful surroundings felt completely different from the formal halls of the castle. Here, there were no expectations and no pressure to maintain appearances. Most people would have been angry after being judged for so long, Ethan said. Olivia looked at the flowers growing beside the path and smiled softly. "Anger is easy," she replied, "but it does not change how people see you. The only thing you can control is who you choose to become." Her answer stayed with Ethan. He had expected bitterness from someone who had been underestimated. Instead, he found wisdom. Olivia had every reason to close her heart, but she chose kindness. That choice made her stronger than anyone realized. As Ethan spent more time around her, he began noticing details that others ignored. He noticed how she adapted instead of surrendering. He noticed how she found solutions instead of focusing on limitations. He noticed how people naturally trusted her because she treated them with respect. The Alpha King began wondering how many times the kingdom had mistaken quiet strength for weakness. Meanwhile, Olivia noticed the change in Ethan as well. He was no longer simply observing her like a ruler studying a situation. He was listening. He asked questions. He wanted to understand her experiences instead of assuming he already knew the answers. For someone who had spent years feeling invisible, that small change meant more than grand promises ever could. But not everyone in Silvermoon Kingdom welcomed the attention Olivia received. Some members of the pack believed the Alpha King was allowing an Omega to challenge old traditions. They believed Olivia's confidence threatened the order they had always known. And soon, Ethan would have to decide whether he would follow the expectations of the past or stand behind the truth he had finally discovered. Because the greatest challenge facing the Alpha King was not proving Olivia's worth. It was convincing the kingdom to finally see what had been there all along. The whispers inside Silvermoon Kingdom grew louder with each passing day. For years, the pack had followed traditions without question, believing that strength could only come from power, status, and appearances. But Olivia Bennet's presence had created something they could not ignore. She had not demanded a position. She had not asked for special treatment. Yet somehow, the Omega everyone underestimated had become the person forcing the kingdom to reconsider everything it believed. Ethan Walker felt the tension building around them. As Alpha King, he had faced difficult decisions before, but this felt different. This was not about borders, resources, or royal agreements. This was about changing the hearts of the people he was responsible for leading. During a gathering inside the castle, several members of the pack expressed their concerns. They questioned why an Omega with a different path should be given so much attention. They believed the old ways existed for a reason. Ethan listened carefully, but for the first time, he noticed something he had ignored before. Many of their arguments were not based on truth. They were based on assumptions. They had never taken the time to understand Olivia. They had only decided who they thought she was. That realization stayed with him as he walked through the castle halls later that evening. He remembered the first moment Olivia looked at him without fear. He remembered the confidence in her voice. He remembered how easily she challenged the image everyone had created of her. Meanwhile, Olivia continued living the same way she always had. She did not change herself because the Alpha King noticed her. She did not become someone different because people started watching her. She remained the same person who helped others, who offered kindness, and who believed that every individual deserved respect. When Ethan found her near the garden, he asked a question that surprised her. How do you keep going when people refuse to see who you are? Olivia paused for a moment. She looked across the peaceful landscape before answering. Because if I let their opinions decide my life, then they would control more than just their words. They would control my future. Ethan stood quietly, understanding the depth behind her answer. Olivia had not survived difficult moments because she was waiting for someone stronger to rescue her. She had survived because she discovered her own strength. That was something the Alpha King had never been taught. Later that week, Ethan made a decision that surprised the entire kingdom. He invited Olivia to stand beside him during the next official gathering, not as someone needing protection, not as someone being given pity, but as someone whose voice deserved to be heard. The announcement created immediate reactions throughout Silvermoon Kingdom. Some welcomed the change. Others struggled to accept it. But Ethan knew leadership was not about making everyone comfortable with old beliefs. Sometimes leadership meant creating a better future, even when change felt unfamiliar. As Olivia entered the grand hall beside the Alpha King, she felt every eye watching her. Years ago, that attention would have made her feel small. Now she simply stood tall and remembered who she was. Ethan looked around the room and realized the true challenge had finally arrived. It was no longer about discovering Olivia's strength. He already knew it existed. The challenge was helping an entire kingdom understand that the person they had overlooked for so long might be the very person who could teach them what strength truly meant. The Grand Hall of Silvermoon Kingdom had never felt so divided. For generations, the pack had believed that an alpha's decision was the final word, and that tradition was the foundation of their strength. But now, as Olivia Bennet stood beside Ethan Walker, many were forced to question beliefs they had never challenged before. The Omega who had once been ignored was no longer standing in the shadows. She was standing where everyone could see her, not because she demanded attention, but because she had earned respect through every choice she had made. Ethan watched the reactions around the room carefully. He could feel the uncertainty among the pack members. Some looked at Olivia with curiosity. Others still struggled to accept her presence beside the Alpha King. But Ethan no longer saw their hesitation as a reason to step back. He saw it as a reminder of why change was necessary. An entire kingdom can follow a tradition, Ethan said calmly, his voice carrying through the hall. But that does not mean every tradition is right. The room became quiet. Olivia looked at him, surprised by the honesty in his words. She knew changing opinions would not happen overnight. She had spent years learning that lesson. But seeing Ethan willing to question the very system that had given him power showed her that he was beginning to understand. After the gathering, Olivia walked through the castle gardens with Ethan. The contrast between the peaceful flowers and the heavy atmosphere inside the castle felt almost impossible to ignore. "You know they will not all accept this immediately," Olivia said. Ethan nodded. "I know. Then why do it?" she asked. Ethan looked toward the ancient castle walls surrounding them. "Because I spent too long believing that protecting a kingdom meant protecting its traditions. I am starting to understand that sometimes protecting a kingdom means protecting the people those traditions forgot." Olivia was silent for a moment. Those words meant more than she expected. She had spent so much of her life accepting that others might never understand her. She never imagined the Alpha King would be the person willing to challenge the very ideas that had hurt her. But Ethan was changing, and she could see it in the smallest moments. He listened before speaking. He asked instead of assuming. He considered the feelings of others instead of only focusing on his own responsibilities. The transformation was not dramatic or sudden. It was built through small decisions every day. Meanwhile, some members of the pack began looking deeper into Olivia's past. They discovered stories that had never been shared. They learned about the time she had helped others without expecting anything in return. They learned about the courage it took for her to continue moving forward when many people had already decided she could not succeed. Slowly, the image they had created of Olivia began to disappear. They were not seeing an Omega defined by a limitation. They were seeing a woman defined by her character. But among the changing opinions, one question remained unanswered. Why had Olivia always carried herself with such strength despite everything she had faced? What secret allowed her to remain hopeful when others would have given up? And as Ethan began to uncover more about the Omega who had changed his perspective, he realized there was still much more about Olivia Bennett that the kingdom did not know. The greatest surprise was not that she was stronger than they believed. It was that they had never truly taken the time to see her at all. The truth about Olivia Bennett was not hidden because she wanted to keep secrets. It was hidden because for years no one had cared enough to ask. Inside Silvermoon Kingdom, people had only seen the surface of her story. They saw the Omega who moved differently. They saw the woman who had to overcome challenges every day. But they never saw the journey that created the strength they admired now. Ethan Walker began discovering those missing pieces one by one. He learned that Olivia's old injury had changed her life, but it had never taken away her determination. When others expected her to step aside, she found new ways to move forward. When others assumed she needed someone to protect her, she became the person others depended on. The Alpha King had spent years searching for warriors with physical strength, but Olivia showed him another kind of power existed. The power to continue when life became difficult. The power to remain kind when the world became unfair. One evening, Ethan visited the archives beneath the castle to understand more about the history of Silvermoon Kingdom. While searching through old records, he discovered references to a forgotten tradition involving Omegas who carried rare qualities of leadership, wisdom, and compassion. The information surprised him because it challenged everything the kingdom had believed for generations. Strength had never belonged to one group alone. It had always appeared in different forms. Meanwhile, Olivia continued helping the people around her, unaware of how much her presence was changing the kingdom. She never wanted a title. She never wanted people to admire her because of a connection to the Alpha King. She wanted to be valued for the person she had always been. When Ethan finally shared what he discovered, Olivia listened quietly. "Why does this matter now?" she asked. Ethan looked at her with honesty. "Because I think the kingdom spent years looking for power in the wrong places." Olivia lowered her eyes for a moment. She had spent so much time proving she was not weak that she almost forgot something important. She never needed to prove she was worthy. She had always been worthy. Ethan noticed the emotion behind her silence. For the first time, he understood that Olivia's greatest battle had never been against her physical limitations. It had been against the opinions of people who refused to see her clearly. "I am sorry," Ethan said softly. "For every moment this kingdom made you feel like you were less than anyone else." Olivia looked at him, surprised by the sincerity in his voice. The Alpha King was not offering a royal apology. He was offering a personal one, and that difference mattered. Their conversation changed something between them. The distance created by titles and expectations became smaller. Ethan no longer saw Olivia as someone he needed to save. He saw her as someone who had already saved herself many times. But as their bond grew stronger, new questions began to appear. The ancient records hinted that Olivia's connection to Silvermoon Kingdom might be deeper than anyone realized. There was a reason her presence felt different. There was a reason the kingdom seemed to change whenever she walked through its halls. And soon, Ethan and Olivia would discover that the Omega everyone underestimated was connected to a destiny far greater than either of them imagined. The revelation hidden inside the ancient records changed the way Ethan Walker looked at Silvermoon Kingdom forever. For years, the Alpha King had believed that leadership was inherited through bloodlines, titles, and the ability to command others. But the forgotten history of the kingdom revealed something much deeper. True leadership was never about standing above everyone else. It was about understanding the people who stood beside you. And no one represented that truth more than Olivia Bennett. As the information about the old tradition slowly spread, the members of the pack began looking at Olivia differently. The same people who once dismissed her now started noticing the qualities they had ignored for years. They saw how she treated everyone with patience. They saw how she carried herself with confidence despite every challenge placed in her path. They saw that her strength was never hidden. They simply refused to recognize it before. Olivia did not celebrate the change. She did not hold anger toward those who had judged her. Instead, she continued doing what she had always done. She helped. She listened. She cared. That was what made Ethan admire her even more. She had every reason to become distant, but she chose compassion. She had every reason to close her heart, but she chose understanding. One afternoon, Ethan invited Olivia to walk through the oldest part of the castle gardens. The area had been protected for generations, filled with ancient trees and quiet paths that few people visited. I used to think being an alpha meant having all the answers, Ethan admitted. Olivia looked at him with curiosity. And now, she asked. Ethan smiled slightly. Now I think a true leader knows when to learn from someone else. Those words surprised Olivia because she never expected the Alpha King to say them. The man who once represented everything powerful and untouchable was now showing humility. He was not trying to appear perfect. He was trying to become better. But while Ethan and Olivia grew closer, some members of the pack struggled with the changes happening around them. They had built their identities around old beliefs, and accepting Olivia meant accepting that they had been wrong. For some, that was difficult. During another gathering, a few voices questioned whether an Omega should have such influence within the kingdom. Ethan listened carefully before responding. He did not react with anger. He did not use his position to silence them. Instead, he asked one simple question. If someone proves their character through their actions, why should their title matter more than their heart? The room became quiet. It was a question many had never considered. Olivia watched Ethan carefully. She realized he was no longer protecting her because he felt responsible for her struggles. He was standing beside her because he respected her. That difference changed everything. As the days passed, Silvermoon Kingdom slowly began to transform. The pack started to understand that Olivia's story was not about weakness becoming strength. It was about a strength that had been present all along. But deep within the ancient records, another discovery waited. A hidden connection between Olivia's past and the future of the kingdom was beginning to emerge. And when the truth finally came to light, everyone would learn that the Omega they underestimated was never ordinary. She was the missing piece of a destiny that had been waiting for her all along. The hidden truth beneath Silvermoon Kingdom was finally beginning to reveal itself, and Olivia Bennett never expected that her own story would become part of the kingdom's future. For years, she believed she was simply an Omega who had learned how to survive in a world that underestimated her. She never imagined that the qualities others overlooked would become the very reason the kingdom needed her. Deep inside the ancient archives of the castle, Ethan Walker discovered a forgotten record connected to Olivia's family history. It spoke of an Omega lineage known for wisdom, healing, and the ability to bring balance between different parts of the pack. The record did not describe someone with the greatest physical strength or the highest position. It described someone whose compassion could unite people who had forgotten how to understand one another. When Ethan shared the discovery with Olivia, she did not immediately accept the idea. She was not interested in being placed on a pedestal. She had spent too much of her life being judged by others to suddenly seek importance because of an old record. "A title does not change who I am," Olivia said quietly. Ethan looked at her with admiration. "That is exactly why you were chosen," he replied. "Because you never needed a title to show your value." Those words touched something inside Olivia. For so long, she had fought against the belief that she was less than others. But Ethan reminded her that her worth had never depended on proving anyone wrong. It existed from the beginning. As the truth became known throughout Silvermoon Kingdom, the pack faced a difficult realization. They had spent years searching for strength while ignoring the person who represented it every day. Olivia had never demanded respect. She had earned it through patience, courage, and kindness. The same members who once questioned her presence now began seeking her guidance. They asked for her advice. They listened to her experiences. Slowly, the distance between the Omega they once ignored and the kingdom she belonged to began to disappear. Ethan watched the transformation with pride, but he also understood something important. Olivia's journey was not about becoming worthy in the eyes of the kingdom. The kingdom was finally becoming worthy of her. One evening, Ethan and Olivia stood together overlooking the lights of Silvermoon Kingdom. The castle walls that once represented a place where she felt invisible now represented something different. A new beginning. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if we never met?" Ethan asked. Olivia smiled softly. "I think we both would have continued searching for something we did not realize we needed." Ethan understood what she meant. He had searched for the perfect way to lead. Olivia had searched for a place where she belonged. Somehow they had helped each other find the answers. But their journey was not finished yet. The ancient records contained one final message about the future of Silvermoon Kingdom. A future where the Alpha and the Omega would have to stand together, not because of tradition but because of choice. And as the kingdom prepared for a new era, Ethan and Olivia realized that destiny had never been about changing who they were. It had always been about discovering who they were meant to become. The morning light reached across Silvermoon Kingdom, touching the ancient castle walls that had witnessed generations of leaders, traditions, and forgotten stories. But this time the kingdom stood at the beginning of something different. It was no longer a place where people were measured only by their titles or the expectations placed upon them. It was becoming a place where character, compassion, and courage mattered most. Olivia Bennet stood in the center of that change, not because she had searched for power, but because she had shown everyone what true strength looked like. The Omega who had once been overlooked was now respected throughout the kingdom. Yet Olivia remained the same person she had always been. She still walked through the villages, listened to people's concerns, and offered help without expecting anything in return. She never forgot what it felt like to be unseen, and that memory became the reason she made sure others would never feel that way again. Ethan Walker watched her from the castle balcony one evening, realizing how much his own understanding of leadership had changed. He once believed an alpha king needed to have every answer and carry every burden alone. Olivia showed him that a great leader did not stand above others. A great leader stood with them. The future of Silvermoon Kingdom was no longer built around one person's authority. It was built around trust. During the final gathering of the pack, Ethan spoke openly about the mistakes of the past. He did not hide behind his crown or pretend that traditions had always been fair. He acknowledged that many people, including Olivia, had been judged before they were understood. The hall remained quiet as his words reached everyone. Then Olivia stepped forward. She looked at the faces around her, including those who had once doubted her. She did not see enemies. She saw people who had the chance to learn and grow, just as she and Ethan had done. "A kingdom does not become stronger when everyone is the same," Olivia said. "It becomes stronger when everyone has a place." Those words became the beginning of a new chapter for Silvermoon Kingdom. Over time, the old beliefs that limited people began to fade. Omegas were no longer viewed through assumptions. Every member of the pack was encouraged to discover their own strengths. The kingdom learned that differences were not weaknesses. They were part of what made them complete. Ethan and Olivia continued their journey together, not because destiny forced them into the same path, but because they chose to walk it side by side. Ethan respected Olivia not because of an ancient prophecy or a hidden connection. He respected her because of the person she had always been. And Olivia trusted Ethan because he had proven that change was possible. Years later, the story of Silvermoon Kingdom was remembered not as the tale of an Alpha King who changed an Omega's life, but as the story of an Omega who changed the heart of a kingdom and taught an Alpha King the meaning of true strength. Because the greatest power was never found in a title, a crown, or a position. It was found in the courage to see others clearly, the kindness to lift them higher, and the choice to become better than who you were before.